Hi guys, how you doing? Welcome back to my channel. And today I'll talk about a car that I owned in the past that I haven't shown you guys yet. I've shown you a couple of my other cars that I owned in the past, like a Saab, a Crown Victoria, to mention only two of them. Now, this one here was my very first car that I ever owned, and it was an Opel Kadett. And the story is this. I got my driver's license at 18 years old because I lived overseas, and that was the youngest or earliest you could get your license. And that for me was in I believe it was in 1994. And so the car I got here was actually my grandfather's car. And it was an 85 model. And since he couldn't drive it anymore, he had it sitting at home. It had a low mileage and he wanted me to have his vehicle. So got my license, and there we go. I got the car, and it looked completely stock when I got it. And of course, what you do when you're young, you try to modify your car, and I changed it, and it looked like this. Here's a picture of my actual car right there. Yeah, it's what I thought would looked good back in the day. Doesn't and I disagree right now. I think it doesn't look that great, but back then I liked it. I had this car for several years. I drove a lot with it. I did a tons of miles in it, and I really enjoyed it. So over in Europe, this was the Opel Kadett, and it was built from 1984 to 1991, and it was a champion because of its aerodynamics. It was really good. Really aerodynamic car back then. After the Kadett retired over in Europe, it came back to Europe as a Daewoo Nexia from 94 to 97. And by the way, here in the United States, it was sold as a Pontiac Le Mans from 89 to 93. And I think it was not a very popular vehicle in the US. So this car was, of course, a front wheel drive vehicle. And yeah, Opel sold a lot of cars. I mean, they sold a lot of them. I think they sold almost 4 million of Opel Kadetts, and it was a very popular car. The rival car was the Volkswagen Golf, also called the Rabbit in the US. That's what it rivaled from all over the generations of Kadetts. After the Kadett, they called it Astra, but it was the same car. Well, the Golf always it's still the Golf. I'll show you a picture of the Astra right now. See, that's the Astra. They still sell it over in Europe and in other markets. Let me show you a picture of the Pontiac Le Mans. There, see, it's slightly modified for the US market, and a picture of the Daewoo Nexia, which was kind of a crappy car made in South Korea. And it was just not a quality car. Now, right now there's quality cars coming out of South Korea. Back then they were not. Okay, let's go back to the Kadett. There's mine again. Here is the interior. That was not my car. That was a different car from the internet. Didn't take that many pictures back then. Then they sold it as a sedan right here. And they also sold as a convertible, which looked very good. I really liked that. And they sold it as a station wagon. And I'll see if I have a station wagon here. I don't have a picture right now of a station wagon, but they sold it as a station wagon too. Here's another Opel Kadett picture that looks pretty good. And the sportiest version, there was the GSI. And the GSI, you can compare with the GTI from Volkswagen. So they were competing with each other. Even the horsepower, everything was about similar. So they were competing. Volkswagen usually was known for a little bit better quality, but it was very close. I liked my Opel Kadett. I thought it was a great car, especially for a first car. And it was not that powerful, not that fast. The engine was an inline four-cylinder, and mine was the Kadett, the 1.3S S like sport, I guess, because the 1.3 liter Kadett had 60 horsepower only. The 1.3 S had 75 horsepower, so not a whole bunch. But yeah, it wasn't all that bad, you know. It had a top speed of 106 miles per hour, which was about 170 kilometers an hour, and I went over that downhill. I still remember that. That was quite fun. You could fit 6 people in the car. It had 13-inch wheels only, 13-inch. So really small. I upgraded to 14-inch wheels back then. And the fuel consumption, according to Opel back then, would have been 26 miles per gallon in the city and 47 miles per gallon on the highway. So not all that bad, but think about that. It was a very light car. Cars back then were just really light. And yeah, really light. And this car didn't even have a catalytic converter. It was still one of the last ones they sold without it. Can you believe that? So that's crazy stuff there. Yeah, while we do that, I'll show a couple pictures of Opel Kadetts, also of the very first one here. Was that the first one or the second generation? I don't know. I think this was the first one. I'm not sure. It was the first or the second generation of Kadett right there. And then some advertisement. Anyways, the Opel Kadett is a success story for Opel. You know, it came out in many generations. I'm not going to go through all of them. And it still exists to this day. And which is great. It was a really it was a successful car in many markets. It was in Europe, and I want to say in the world market, but I don't know where else. I think they had them in different markets under different names, but it was a successful car in Europe, for sure. Especially the sporty GSI variant was really good, and it's had a 16 valve engine. I remember that was quite the thing to have that one back then. So there was several engines. It started with the 1.2 liter. Don't ask me how many horsepower. I think 54 horsepower, if I remember right. And Volkswagen had a Golf back then with 55 horsepower. I remember they were small engines. The 2-liter gas engine with 155 horsepower was the sporty one back then, because it was pretty light. And then there was diesels ranging from 54 horsepower to, I believe, 72 horsepower. Anyways, it was all over in 91 when the last Opel Kadett was produced. And then it came back as the Deo, but that was not a success story. Alright guys, I hope you liked this little Opel Kadett story and my first car. If you had an Opel or an Opel Kadett or a Pontiac Le Mans or even a Daewoo next year, please let me know and write it in the comments. This is also a good moment to subscribe if you haven't done that yet. So please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. I always need that. And please come back for the next video. Have a wonderful day.